Nothing came easy when he was defending you, often picking up his assignment as soon as they crossed half, and all he needed was for them to make one small mistake and he was going to take the ball. Mookie Blaylock was one of the best defenders of his era and made his reputation off his relentless defense and extremely quick hands. But he was still capable on the offensive end, as he was a point guard that could do what you needed him to do. He could run the offense, score when he needed to, and was one of the league's better distributors during the 90s. His offensive numbers didn't really jump out at you, but they were more than respectable, with the biggest knock on his game being his inconsistency in his shooting, as although he could be dangerous from deep, he could also be streaky. Blaylock found success through an endless motor, as he was a pest on defense and could take advantage of tired teams by pushing the ball at all points of the game. His best years were spent in Atlanta, yet he never had much postseason success. However, during those years, he had some issues with alcohol. But what has overshadowed his playing career is how much he struggled with alcohol after he was done, ultimately spending time in prison for being at fault in an accident which took someone's life. And that's something he'll always have to carry with him. But if we're looking at him from a strictly basketball perspective, Mookie Blaylock is one of the most under-the-radar players in NBA history, so we'll focus on him today. Let's jog your memory. Deron Mookie Blaylock attended Garland High School in Garland, Texas, where he developed a reputation as a defensive stopper, but he would also have his first consequence from marijuana use as early as his senior year in high school, as he was suspended for the district championship game due to marijuana. After his high school career, the next stop for Blaylock was junior college, as he would enroll at Midland going into his freshman season in 1986. By the time he was a sophomore, he was putting up averages of 19.6 points and 4.5 assists per game, as he helped lead the Chaparrals to a 32-4 record. After his first 2 seasons, he was a 2-time first-team All-Conference member and was named an NJCAA All-American as a sophomore. But his time in JuCo was now over, as he would transfer to D1 basketball going into his junior year to play under coach Billy Tubbs. And with Oklahoma featuring a running offense, which emphasized pushing the ball, along with the trapping defense, Blaylock was a perfect fit. It was going to be interesting to see how Blaylock performed as a junior, as on top of it being D1 competition, during the National Junior College Tournament in March of 1987, he broke his foot, which resulted in a pin being placed in his foot, meaning he would be playing most of the season with a foot that wasn't at 100%. Nonetheless, he would immediately become a starter, and had great appeal due to his ability to play both guard positions. He joined a veteran Sooners team who featured future NBA players like Stacey King, Harvey Grant, and Ricky Grace. Blaylock showed that the improved competition had no effect on him, as he finished as the team's 3rd leading scorer and 2nd best distributor, but it was the defensive side of the ball where he truly dominated, as he would lead the team with 3.8 steals per game, which ranked 3rd in the nation. Additionally, his 150 total steals this year set a then single-season record. The Sooners were a force. They would start 14-0 with Blaylock recording a school record 13 steals in a December 12th win versus Centenary, as well as a 30-point performance in a 3-point win over Georgia to win the Chaminade Classic. After their undefeated start, they would lose 2 games before going on another 12-game win streak, and overall would finish the regular season at 27-3, ranked as the number 4 team in the nation. Next was the Big 8 tournament, which saw Oklahoma defeat Colorado, then Missouri, before taking the title with a win over Kansas State in the final. So they would enter the NCAA tournament as a 1 seed, with their last national championship appearance coming over 40 years earlier. But that would change in 1988. The first round brought Chattanooga, who Oklahoma would easily defeat with Blaylock recording just 4 points, yet adding 9 assists and 4 steals. The second round versus Auburn was much better, as Blaylock would finish with 21 points, 9 assists, and 4 steals in a win, to advance to a Sweet 16 matchup with Louisville. Blaylock would then finish with 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists, as the Sooners won again, and were heading to the Elite 8 versus Villanova. Blaylock would have 14 points and 5 rebounds, but would also rack up another 4-steal game, as a blowout victory led to an appearance in the Final Four for Oklahoma. Their run would continue after an 8-point defeat of Arizona, as although Blaylock put up just 7 points, he added 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals. And now Oklahoma was returning to the national championship for the first time since 1947. Waiting for them was the Kansas Jayhawks, led by Danny Manning. Yet Oklahoma was feeling good after defeating Kansas in both of their regular season meetings, but they wouldn't be able to pull off the clean sweep. All 5 Oklahoma starters would score in double figures, as Blaylock finished with 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists, and would also tie a single-game tournament record with 7 steals. But Manning would will Kansas to a 4-point win, as Oklahoma's dream season came up just short, and Blaylock's year ended with him averaging about 16.5 points, 6 assists, and 4 steals per game, as he was named second team All Big 8. Grant and Grace were gone going into the 89 season, meaning Blaylock would have more offensive expectations, and he would respond by combining with King to average 46 points per game, as Blaylock would finish as the team's second leading scorer, and would lead the team in assists and steals. His 3.7 steals per game would be second in the nation, and once again his 131 total steals would lead the nation, as he would be named first team All Big 8 and a consensus second team All-American. Oklahoma would begin the season ranked number 4 in the nation, but would start at just 2-1, after losing to number 3 Michigan at the Maui Invitational. But after this, they would rattle off 11 straight, which included a December 17th win over Loyola Marymount, in which Blaylock tied his school record with 13 steals. The Sooners would then go 7-2, and were sitting at 20-3 going into a February 12th matchup with number 1 Arizona. And this game would end in a 2-point Sooners win, which propelled them to the number 1 spot in the nation, which they would hold for 3 weeks before a loss to Missouri led to them finishing the season as the number 4 ranked team, with a record of 25-4. Oklahoma would get a matchup with Colorado to begin the Big 8 tournament, but they didn't have Blaylock, as he had been arrested for public intoxication, resulting in a suspension. And while he definitely wasn't the first college student to be drunk in public, and wouldn't be the last, as the years went on, it would become more apparent that Blaylock had a legitimate problem with alcohol. Nonetheless, Oklahoma won the game and then beat Iowa State with Blaylock, but would come up short after losing to Missouri in the championship game. However, they would still enter the NCAA tournament as a 1 seed and survive a first-round scare versus East Tennessee State, as Blaylock finished with 15 points, 2 assists, and a steal in a 1-point win. Round 2 would be a blowout defeat of Louisiana Tech, in which Blaylock finished with a game-high 34 points, along with 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 4 steals, which would advance Oklahoma to the Sweet 16. But this is where their season ended, as Virginia would defeat them by 6 points. And Blaylock would play poorly, as he finished with just 5 points and 5 assists on 2 of 12 shooting, but he would still record 4 steals. Yet his regular season would end with him averaging about 20 points, 6.5 assists, and 3.5 steals per game. Additionally, Blaylock's senior season saw him become, at the time, the only player in NCAA history to record at least 200 assists and 100 steals in a season. And he would leave OU as their career leader in steals after just 2 years, with a total of 281. So Blaylock entered the 1989 NBA draft with a reputation as not only a player who could run the offense, but more so as a player with elite defensive potential. And in a draft that didn't feature a lot of other great point guard talent outside of Tim Hardaway, Blaylock stood out even more, which would lead to him being taken in the top half of the first round as the second point guard off the board. Blaylock joined a New Jersey Nets team who needed a lot of work. A few days prior to the draft, they had traded away their best and most reliable player in Buck Williams. Yet this trade had not only brought them the pick that became Blaylock, but also former second overall pick Sam Bowie. The Nets also featured Roy Hinson, who had been their leading scorer in '89, but severe knee tendonitis would limit him to just 25 games this year. Their primary starter at point guard was Lester Connor, and while he was capable, he wasn't a difference maker, so it seemed like Blaylock may get an early chance to challenge for the starting spot. Blaylock would begin the season coming off the bench, but was getting over 25 minutes per game. And then in early January, he would crack the starting lineup and stay there over the next 17 games, where he would show improved production, until an early February injury would keep him out for over 2 months, as he would return to come off the bench in 4 games near the end of the year for a Nets team who finished at 17-65 and missed the playoffs. But Blaylock's rookie season would still see him average about 10 points, 4 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. Before the 91 season began, there was another Mookie Blaylock playing for the first time in early October, but it wasn't on a basketball court. It was at a cafe in Seattle, as there was a new up-and-coming band who went by the name Mookie Blaylock, due to being fans of the now second-year guard. But this name didn't last long, as by 1991, they were going by their much more recognizable name of Pearl Jam. But going back to basketball, a 17-65 finish would give the Nets the first overall pick in the 1990 NBA draft, and they would use the selection on Syracuse power forward Derrick Coleman. However, Hinson's knees would deteriorate further as he played just 9 games in what would be the final season of his career. The Nets would add some offense by trading for veteran Reggie Theus in the offseason, who would end up leading the team in scoring. Blaylock had been elevated to a starting role and would in turn improve his numbers as he was third on the team in scoring while finishing first in assists and steals. And he would quickly show he was one of the league's elite defenders, as his 2.3 steals per game would be 6th in the league. Blaylock would hit double figures in 56 games and would record 9 double-doubles. And on the defensive end, he would post 25 games with at least 3 steals, and would even have 2 games with 7 steals. New Jersey still didn't look great about halfway through the year, as they were 13-26 on January 24th. but they would then be involved in a trade with Portland, which saw them receive an offensive star in the making, in second year Drazen Petrovic. But the addition of Petrovic wasn't enough to turn around New Jersey's season, as they went 13-30 after acquiring him, and their 26-56 record was not enough for a playoff berth, as Blaylock's second season ended with him averaging about 14 points, 6 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. The Nets would have another high pick in the 91 draft, as they would select Georgia Tech's Kenny Anderson second overall. But the problem was that Anderson also played point guard, and you don't use a second overall pick to draft a backup. So now Blaylock's future in New Jersey was a lot more hazy. But the 92 season would still see him in a starting role, somewhat due to conflict between Anderson and head coach Bill Fitch, due to Fitch reportedly being unhappy with the Nets letting go of multiple players to make room for Anderson. But Blaylock would respond with one of the most efficient seasons of his career. His scoring had dipped slightly, but he was one of 5 starters to average double figures, while still leading the team in assists and steals. Additionally, his 43.2% shooting would be a career high, and his 2.1 turnovers per game would be a top 3 average for his career. As well, his 2.4 steals per game placed him inside the NBA's top 5. Blaylock would hit double figures in 58 games and would record 18 double-doubles, and this year he would have 28 games with at least 3 steals. They no longer featured Theus, but Petrovic took on a starting role, and this led to the Nets improving to a top 12 scoring offense. And even though they started the season at 2-11, they would recover enough to finish at 40-42, which would be enough to get them a first-round playoff matchup versus Cleveland. Unfortunately, Blaylock would struggle in his playoff debut. He would average less than 10 points per game while shooting below 31%. He would hit double figures in 2 games and continue being a defensive menace, as he averaged nearly 4 steals per game, with his best performance coming in a Game 3 win when he had 10 points, 12 assists, and 4 steals. But that would be New Jersey's only win, as they were defeated in 4 games, and Blaylock's regular season ended with him averaging about 14 points, 7 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. But the Nets were going to make some major changes over the offseason, and Blaylock wouldn't be safe from those changes. Fitch resigned after the season and was replaced with Chuck Daly, and after a few months, Blaylock was traded to the Hawks just days before the season started. Reportedly, he was becoming unhappy, as he felt he deserved an improved contract and also didn't like the idea of a reduced role in 93. And this looked to be what was going to happen, as Anderson had put together a great preseason, making Blaylock expendable. But now, Blaylock would be joining a Hawks team led by Dominique Wilkins and Kevin Willis. Atlanta had been one of the better teams of the past decade due to the superstar play of Wilkins, but he was turning 33 this season and coming off a serious Achilles injury. So bringing in a young, talented player like Blaylock was a breath of fresh air. From a scoring perspective, he would put up similar numbers to his time in New Jersey, but with great finishers on the wings in Wilkins and second-year Stacey Augmon, Blaylock was able to bump up his assist numbers to nearly 8.5 per game, which would be a top 10 mark in the league. And this would be his first of 5 consecutive seasons with over 200 total steals, as his 2.5 steals per game would be second in the league. Also, Blaylock's 3-point shooting became much more prominent once he left the Nets, as in his first 3 seasons, he shot a combined 225 3-pointers. Yet in 1993 alone, he would attempt 315 shots from beyond the arc, making them at a 37.5% clip, which would also be a career high. Blaylock would score in double figures 56 times, including his first career 30-point game in a January 30th win versus Philly. Additionally, he would record 20 double-doubles, as a March 6th win versus Utah saw him go for 11 points and a career-high 23 assists. And his ball hawking was still a problem, as he had recorded 35 games with at least 3 steals. Luckily for the Hawks, Wilkins came back better than anyone expected, finishing as the league's second-best scorer. And even though they were 27-31 late in the year, they would go 16-8 the rest of the way, to finish at 43-39 and get a first-round matchup versus Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls. But the Bulls were just the superior team, easily sweeping Atlanta, as a postseason redemption wouldn't be in the cards for Blaylock. Once again, he averaged less than 10 points per game and would only shoot about 36% from the field. He would lead the team in assists, but surprisingly would only average a single steal per game, and would also average nearly 4 turnovers per game. So his first season in Atlanta would end with him averaging about 13.5 points, 8.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. But Atlanta still liked what they saw, as they locked up Blaylock long-term during the offseason, and they brought in a new coach in Lenny Wilkins, who would really help Blaylock push himself into the conversation of the top point guards in the league. His scoring remained the same, but once again he upped his assist numbers, as his career-high 9.7 per game would be a top 3 mark in the league. He would also be top 3 in the league with 2.6 steals per game. As for the season, he recorded a career-high 212 total steals, and overall he would finish the year with one of the league's 15 lowest defensive ratings. He would hit double figures in 66 games, record 42 double-doubles, and even add 2 triple-doubles. And defensively, he would rack up at least 3 steals on 37 occasions. So his great all-around play earned him his first and only All-Star selection, as well as a spot on the first-team All-Defense. But shortly after the All-Star break, with the Hawks boasting a 36-16 record, which was tied for first in the East, they pulled off a blockbuster trade. With Wilkins becoming a free agent at season's end, it didn't seem like he and Atlanta were going to come to an agreement, so to avoid losing him for nothing, they sent him to the Clippers for their unhappy forward Danny Manning, who was also on an expiring contract. Even after the Manning trade, Atlanta would go 21-8 behind their top 5 scoring defense, as they would finish at a conference-best 57-25 and get a first-round matchup with Miami. Blaylock would again struggle. After the first 2 games, he was averaging 8.5 points and 8.5 assists, but had also shot a combined 6 of 26 from the field and was averaging 3 turnovers, as the series was tied going into Game 3. But then as the fourth quarter of Game 3 was winding down, Atlanta was down by 8, and Blaylock had gone 0 for 11 up to that point. But when the Hawks needed it, he started making shots, as he would hit 3 shots from beyond the arc in the final 90 seconds. But he wouldn't be able to hit the 4th, as the Heat would hold on to take the game and a 2-1 lead. But this seemed to wake up Blaylock, as he would score a game-high 29 points while going 6 of 10 from beyond the arc in a Game 4 win. Then although he would go just 5 of 14 from the field in Game 5, he would record a postseason career-high 18 assists, as Atlanta took the win to advance to the second round versus Indiana. This would be a 6-game series in which Blaylock would hit double figures in 5 of them, yet would shoot just 37% from the field. However, he would average over 8 assists and over 2 steals per game, and would even record 2 triple-doubles, including a 14-point, 13-assist, and 10-rebound performance to stave off elimination in Game 5. And although he would follow that up with 23 points on over 53% shooting in Game 6, it wasn't enough, as Atlanta lost the game and the series, and Blaylock's season ended with him averaging about 14 points, 9.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. Manning turned out to be a rental, as he left in the offseason for Phoenix, and then after just 2 games, the Hawks would trade their other franchise staple in Kevin Willis to Miami for a package headlined by Steve Smith, as this would be one of the most important additions which led to the Hawks' mid-90s success. Without Willis, Wilkins, or Manning, the Hawks needed scoring from other places, and Blaylock would take on the more unfamiliar role, as he would attempt a career-high 15 shots per game and would lead his team in scoring for the first and only time of his career. This season would see him record double figures in 70 games and have 28 games with at least 20 points, but he was still performing his usual point guard duties, as he would lead the team and finish top 10 in the league in assists, while his 2.5 steals per game would be the second best average in the league. So on top of his scoring, he would record 18 double-doubles and 2 triple-doubles, and would have 35 games with at least 3 steals, as he would again be named first-team All-Defense. But although it was a career year for Blaylock, there would also be some blemishes, as he was arrested in January for driving while intoxicated and speeding, which would be foreshadowing for his later years. But on the court, the Hawks still featured one of the league's worst offenses, yet also one of its best defenses. And although they wouldn't win like they did last year, they would still finish with a 42-40 record, which was enough for a rematch with Indiana. But this would be quick work for the Pacers, as they swept Atlanta. Blaylock was producing, averaging 18 points and nearly 6 assists per game, but he was also shooting below 37% and committing 3 turnovers per game. So a quick exit ended Blaylock's season, as he averaged about 17 points, 7.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. The Hawks looked pretty much the same going into the 96 season. Blaylock's scoring had dropped, yet he was still a top 2 scorer on the team. He would lead the team in assists, but it was on his lowest average since his rookie year. But this made sense, as the Hawks played at one of the slowest paces in the league, fully embracing a more defensive identity, which was fine with Blaylock, as he would again lead the team in steals, while finishing second in the league in that category, leading to a second-team All-Defense selection. Blaylock would hit double figures in 65 games and record 9 double-doubles, while also putting up 36 games with at least 3 steals. Atlanta would start the year at 14-17, but then a 10-game win streak would get them above 500, where they would stay as they finished at 46-36 and got a first-round matchup with Indiana. And this time, they would finally get past the Pacers. However, at this point, a common postseason theme with Blaylock was him giving you the good and the bad. He would hit double figures in every game, averaging about 16 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists, as well as 3.5 steals, which included a postseason career high of 8 steals in a Game 3 win. But he would also only shoot about 38% for the series and commit nearly 4 turnovers per game. But Atlanta won in 5 to advance to round 2 versus Orlando. But the Hawks had no answer for Shaq, and a 6'1 Blaylock would have his own struggles with a 6'7 Penny Hardaway. But offensively, Blaylock put together one of the most efficient series of his career, averaging about 18 points and 7 assists, while shooting over 46% from the field and from deep, and only committing about 2 turnovers per game. He would hit double figures in every game and would record a 14-point, 11-assist double-double in Atlanta's lone win of the series, as they would fall in 5. And Blaylock's regular season would end with him averaging about 15.5 points, 6 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. So the Hawks were already one of the league's best defensive teams, but their defense would get a whole lot stronger going into 1997. Over the offseason, Atlanta signed one of the league's premier players in former Defensive Player of the Year Dikembe Mutombo, as they now featured a top perimeter defender and top interior defender. Additionally, they would get a full year out of Christian Laettner, who they had acquired from Minnesota during the 96 season. So the Hawks now had one of the most complete starting lineups in the NBA. Their inside-outside defensive duo would include the league's second-best shot blocker and eventual Defensive Player of the Year in Mutombo, and then would feature Blaylock, whose career-high 2.7 steals per game would be the league's highest mark, as he would finish third in Defensive Player of the Year voting. But it wasn't just on the defensive side of the ball that Blaylock was putting up career highs, as his 17.4 points per game would also be a career high, and he would average nearly 6 assists and a career-high 5.3 rebounds per game, while tying a career high by shooting 43.2% from the field. Blaylock would hit double figures in 68 games, which included a career-high 39 points to go along with 8 rebounds and 8 assists in a November 12th defeat of Cleveland. He would also record 14 double-doubles and do his usual damage forcing turnovers, as he had 37 games with at least 3 steals, finishing the season with a top 20 defensive rating and a selection of the second team all-defense. However, he would also be arrested in February while in Vancouver, as he was in possession of 56 grams of weed, while still being on probation for his 95 arrest. Yet he would only end up paying a small fine for this offense. But the Hawks continued to ride their top 5 defense to a 56-26 finish, which would get them a first-round matchup with Detroit. The series would go the distance, as Blaylock would average over 12 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals per game. Yet he would shoot below 33% from the field and average 3 turnovers. But the Hawks would win the series and advance to a second-round matchup with Chicago, where Blaylock would really up his play. A tight Game 1 loss saw Blaylock go for 31 points and 12 rebounds, and then he would follow that up with 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists, as Atlanta evened the series. But he would cool off after his hot start, averaging about 15 points and 7 assists while shooting just 39% from the field and going 6 of 22 from deep over the next 3 games, as Atlanta lost all 3 to end their year, with Blaylock's regular season seeing him average about 17.5 points, 6 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. Over the offseason, Blaylock would sign a 4-year, $18 million extension with Atlanta. He would deal with a groin injury throughout the 98 season, as although he played 70 games, he wasn't always at 100%. His scoring dropped significantly, and he would shoot below 40% from the field and below 27% from deep, as he would never have a season shooting 40% or better for the rest of his career. He would make up for some of his shooting struggles by finishing as a top 15 distributor in the league, as well as leading the league in steals for a second consecutive season, finishing with another second-team all-defense selection. He would hit double figures in 51 games while recording 7 double-doubles and 2 triple-doubles, which included an April 14th performance versus Philly, where he had 14 points, 11 assists, and a career-high 10 steals in a win. The Hawks featured the same core, but they were aging, as 3 starters, including Blaylock, were at least 30. Nonetheless, a top 10 scoring defense would still get them another 50-win season, as a 50-32 Hawks team took on Charlotte in the first round. Blaylock would put up 19 points, 9 assists, and 4 steals in a Game 1 loss, then would have 13 assists, but just 7 points on 2 of 12 shooting in a Game 2 loss. He would put up 16 points in just 26 minutes of action in a Game 3 blowout win, but then Charlotte would end the series with a Game 4 win, as Blaylock had 17 points and 3 steals. As for the regular season, Blaylock averaged about 13 points, 6.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. The 99 Hawks no longer featured Laettner, but the lockout-shortened season would see them finish as the league's best scoring defense. Yet they would also finish as the second worst scoring offense. But Blaylock would still be the team's second leading scorer, while leading the team in assists and steals. But for the first time since his rookie year, he wouldn't finish top 5 in the league, as his 2.1 steals per game would be the 10th highest mark in the NBA. But his career low 96.2 defensive rating would be one of the 20 best marks in the league, as he would earn his final second team all-defense selection. He would have 36 games in double figures, 4 double-doubles, and a triple-double. And even in a 50-game season, he would have 14 games with at least 3 steals. Atlanta was sitting at 22-17 late in the year, but would go 9-2 to end the year, as their 31-19 record got them a first-round matchup with Detroit. The Hawks would jump out to a 2-0 lead after 2 blowout wins, with Blaylock averaging 15 points, 6.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. But Detroit would even the series after 2 blowouts of their own, as Blaylock would average just 7.5 points, 3 assists, and 1 steal per game in those 2 games. But Atlanta would take Game 5, with Blaylock putting up 17 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals, as they would get New York in round 2. But even with a banged-up Patrick Ewing, the Knicks would sweep the Hawks in what was a defensive battle. Blaylock would average about 13 points, 3 assists, and 2.5 steals, but would shoot just 28% from the field. And surprisingly, the normally relentless Blaylock had a moment in Game 2 when he asked to be taken out of the game in the 4th quarter after turning over the ball and then failing to get back on defense. So Blaylock's season ended with some uncharacteristic play, but for the season he averaged about 13.5 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals per game. But after an embarrassing playoff exit, Atlanta decided on a full overhaul going into the new millennium. A day before the draft, Blaylock was included in a trade to Golden State, as the veteran point guard was joining a very young Warriors roster. The Warriors' best player was a second-year Antoine Jamison, but he would only manage 47 games this season before knee surgery ended his year. They would also make a midseason trade with Philly to acquire another up-and-coming second-year player in Larry Hughes. But Blaylock would be the team's starting point guard, appearing in 73 games. His numbers had dropped a bit, but that may be more due to him being 32 and playing for a new team, as he would still lead the team in assists and steals, and would be a top 15 distributor in the league, and his 2 steals per game would be 5th best in the NBA. He would still hit double figures in 38 games while recording 9 double-doubles and 26 games with at least 3 steals. But the Warriors were a far cry from what Blaylock was used to, as after playing on elite defensive teams in Atlanta, he would spend this season on a Golden State team who featured the league's worst scoring defense. And then with Jamison missing nearly half the season, their offense wouldn't be much better, as they would finish at 19-63 and miss the playoffs, as Blaylock's season saw him average about 11.5 points, 6.5 assists, and 2 steals per game. The Warriors didn't possess a first-round pick in the 2000 draft, so their poor finish didn't yield them any solid prospects, as they entered 0-1 looking mostly the same. Jamison would play all 82 games and put together a career year as a top 10 scorer in the league. But now Hughes would miss 32 games. Blaylock would also appear in just 69 games while only starting 59 of them, yet he would again put up his usual numbers, leading the team in assists and steals, as his 2.4 steals per game would be the second highest mark in the NBA. He would have 37 games in double figures, 10 double-doubles, and 1 triple-double. But with Golden State not making any significant additions to the team, it was no surprise that they put together a season quite similar to last year, finishing at 17-65 and missing the playoffs, as Blaylock averaged about 11 points, 6.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. Going into 0-2, the Warriors had a great rookie class, with Jason Richardson, Troy Murphy, and Gilbert Arenas. But Blaylock's role saw a significant reduction. He was coming off the bench and getting only about 17 minutes per game over the first half of the season, while putting up career-low numbers. And then in early January, the Warriors put him on IR with a strained calf, which turned out to be season-ending, as he wouldn't make another appearance in 0-2, with the Warriors finishing at 21-61, and Blaylock finishing with averages of about 3.5 points, 3.5 assists, and half a steal per game. Blaylock was now a free agent, and after not signing with anyone during the offseason, he would retire shortly before the 0-3 season. But then his struggles with alcohol would ramp up.
But all that is a distant memory, as Mookie Blaylock will spend the next several years of his life behind bars.
On May 31st, 2013, Blaylock was involved in a 2-vehicle head-on collision, which left him on life support, but tragically took the life of Monica Murphy, one of the passengers in the car he hit. Blaylock's car had veered out of its lane, which many initially assumed was due to drunk driving, as he had been arrested 6 times for DUI since 2007, with some very significant amounts of alcohol in his system. But part of the reason that this horrible collision occurred was because he didn't have alcohol in his system. Blaylock had been trying to quit drinking, yet had been having serious withdrawals, which included seizures for weeks leading up to the accident, as he would have a seizure while driving, which led to him losing control of the car in this fatal collision. Initially, it was thought it would only be a misdemeanor charge due to him being sober at the time of the crash, but then it was discovered that Blaylock had already been prohibited from driving by a doctor due to his seizures, and had signed a form acknowledging and agreeing to that. Not to mention, he was driving on a suspended license due to a different DUI, and had a warrant for failing to appear in court for yet another DUI. Blaylock's condition would eventually improve and he was taken off of life support, but then in 2014 he would take a plea bargain and serve 3 years in prison as well as 8 years probation, leaving an ugly blemish on his career and his life. Mookie Blaylock was quiet and unassuming, never wanting to be in the spotlight, and never having much to say, and his play reflected that. He wasn't super animated, and he didn't look to be the star or the big-time scorer. He just ran the offense as he needed to, pushing the ball and scoring when required, while acting as one of the league's better passers throughout his career. His efficiency left a lot to be desired, but he would more than make up for that as one of the league's most hounding defenders throughout his career. Great defense doesn't bring the same fanfare as great offense, but that was perfect for Blaylock, as being one of the league's most valuable defenders allowed him to fly under the radar as one of many great defenders on the mid-90s Hawks. An all-time great pickpocket, Blaylock was just an effective point guard on both ends of the court, but he clearly had his struggles off the court, as made evident by his arrests during his playing career and his tragic mistake after it. There's no excuse for the decision he made. However, as a player, Mookie Blaylock was one of the best at what he did, and today is one of the most forgotten and overlooked due to what happened after. But that's it for today's episode on Mookie Blaylock. Hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. If you liked it, check out this one on one of his Atlanta teammates, or this one on the player who beat him in the '88 National Championship. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.